Do you agree that the people who do all of the work should get all the money generated from the work that they do? And do you also agree that we shouldn't take money from hardworking people and give it to a bunch of lazy freeloaders who don't work at all? If you succeed in life, you're gonna have to work for it, right? Yeah, hell yeah, this is America, brother. That's how it works here. Well, congratulations, you're a leftist. No, I'm serious. I mean it. If you believe that, then that makes you a leftist. The core principle of the leftist ideology is the elimination of social hierarchies. If you want something, you gotta earn it. You gotta get out there and work for it. Don't believe me? Well, look at this. It's all right here. This is the definition. Check it out for yourself. On the other hand, the right wing's core principle is the preservation and maintenance of certain social hierarchies. They believe that there should be a class of people who do all of the work and get the minimum amount of money in return for all that work, and a separate higher class of people who don't work at all, who are born into an advantageous position, who get all that excess money left over from all the work that other people are doing. And they also get all the power and the rights and privileges and property, and the government and law enforcement exist only to protect their higher place in the hierarchy. So does my explanation of left and right surprise you? Well, you shouldn't be surprised, because there's a lot of words that are used incorrectly to keep people confused and used to reinforce social hierarchies that ultimately keep the working people of this country poor, and it also allows a bunch of lazy idiots to remain rich and powerful. So left and right didn't just come out of nowhere. Its origins date all the way back to the seating arrangements of delegates in the French National Assembly back in 1789, where they discussed what would happen to the French government during the French Revolution. The members loyal to the monarchy and committed to keeping the lazy, worthless class of rich people in positions of power sat on the right-hand side of the presiding officer, while the delegates working for a new constitution that restricts the king's power to make sure that the peasant class can work their way out of their position in the hierarchy sat to the left-hand side. And the moderates who held no core principles sat in the middle, starting the long tradition of centrist losers who do nothing but waste space and slow down progress. So the origins of the concept of a left-right divide is a stone-cold fact. The original left wing were the French founding fathers, basically, who were fighting for the common man to remove power from an unelected monarchy who undeservedly held all the wealth and power in the country, while the right wing was made up of loyalists who had accepted a life under the subjugation under a wealthy elite. But when you look at left and right today, it seems like the regular, everyday working man sees the left-right divide in a completely opposite direction. They seem to think that the American right stands for the common man, they stand for hard work and free speech and liberty and justice for all, until you see what they actually do when they gain power. Most people just don't know what these words mean or where they came from. Nobody explained it to them before, and a lot of social and economic pain comes from these misunderstandings. And since I don't have much of a social life, I guess I'll sit here and explain some of them to you.
A woman, by definition, is an adult human female. A man is an adult human male. Those are the only two options available for the human species.
What is a woman?
A woman is a biological human female.
Biological sex, binary. It's been binary for like 100 million years, longer than that.
So that right there is not correct. And I don't mean that that's an opinion that I disagree with. The things they are saying are factually incorrect. Gender is not a biological fact. Sex is a biological fact. For humans, there are males and females and intersex people and a few other subgenres that people don't really talk about too much. It's, none of your business. And it gets way more complicated than that when you look at the rest of the animal kingdom. Human males have a dick and balls, and human females have a vulva and a birth canal, but birds and reptiles have a cloaca. What the hell is that? You can look right at a cloaca if you're a freak like that and not even be able to tell if it's a male or a female. Some mollusks are hermaphroditic and they mate by getting each other pregnant at the same time. And sometimes it gets pretty freaky. It's kind of, let me put this down. It's kind of like that. They're doing that. See what it's like that. There you go, that's what they're doing. Some fish and amphibians change their sex kind of on a whim due to environmental factors. And if that wasn't the case, then the Jurassic Park films wouldn't be nearly as exciting. So what I'm saying is biological sex is incredibly complex, and scientists are learning new things about it all the time. Gender, on the other hand, is not rooted in biology. It's a bunch of rules that humans came up with and that are somewhat tethered to a person's biological sex, but it doesn't have to be, because the thing about rules is nobody has to follow them if they don't really want to. For example, dresses are for females, right? Right? Well, that's the rule for Western women, but if you put a dress on a female squid, then it doesn't really make any sense, right? I mean, there's space for all those freaky ass tentacles, but where are the straps gonna go? Squids don't have shoulders. It's just gonna slip right off. And while we're at it, take a look at this picture of a school of squid. Tell me which is male and female. I couldn't. Plants even come in male and female variants. Anybody out there who has cultivated certain flowering crops know that the female version is way more valuable because that's the one that grows buds that can be sold for profit. I'm talking about kiwi fruit, obviously. So does it make sense to staple a dress onto a kiwi tree and claim that that is consistent with its gender ideology? Of course not. It doesn't make any sense. That's insane. I already know that the tree is female by the plump little ovaries that are dangling from the branches. Unbifurcated leg garments are worn by men in all sorts of cultures around the world, like kilts, yukata, the kaisaya worn by Buddhist monks, lava lava worn in Samoa. Are you gonna walk up to one of these guys and tell them that they're breaking the rules of being a man? I doubt it. Sailors are known to refer to their own ships as being female. These geysers refer to the British Isles as being female. And the planet we live on is called Mother Earth by numerous cultures. And last time I checked, none of these things have a vagina. Unless this counts. I don't know, I'm not a gynecologist, so I couldn't say. Just think about it this way. Imagine people are having a good time on a night out bowling, laser lights shining, music blasting, got the disco ball going, the gutter bumpers are up, nobody cares about the score or if they're even winning or losing, they're just having a good time enjoying themselves. Now imagine some angry dork yelling at them from the sidelines about breaking the rules, shouting at them every time they stepped over the line, whining about cosmic bowling being an affront to the sanctity of the game. You know, they're just dorks, they're buzzkills, nobody wants them around. And that's what people who are obsessed with gender norms look like to me, just miserable dorks. But what about sports? What if somebody chooses to become a transgender to gain an advantage? Well, first of all, that's fucking stupid. Why would somebody go through thousands of dollars worth of doctor's visits, hormone replacement therapy, and surgeries to gain an advantage in sports when they can just go to the gym and practice the sport so they can get better at it? This is especially dumb because there's already a group of people who have been going against their innate genetic makeup to gain an advantage at a specific sport, and it's been going on for decades without anybody complaining about it. They're called left-handed baseball players. Left-handed batters have a distinct advantage because they are a few steps closer to first base. And left-handed pitchers have an advantage over the more common right-handed hitters because their ball trajectory is more difficult to track. Left or right-handedness is a genetic trait. We know the gene that influences that in people, and thousands of right-handed people train to hit and throw with their left hand to gain an advantage every single year. Adults are grooming children right now to defy their genetic makeup and train with their less dominant hand right now. Why aren't you complaining about that? Why aren't you calling for genetic testing to make sure people born with a right-handed gene actually throw and hit with their right hand? Because it sounds stupid. It's a waste of time. So kindly shut the fuck up about trans people who are just enjoying their hobby. Also, there's like 10 trans people in all of NCAA sports, and many of them transition from women to men, which should theoretically give them a disadvantage, right? But what about bathroom safety? Trans people are changing their sex to enter women's restrooms to creep on women. Well, first of all, no they aren't. Straight men are already doing that, and what's stopping a cis-het man from walking into a woman's restroom right now, claiming that they're a trans man being forced to use the bathroom of their birth sex? There's nobody stationed in front of women's rooms checking credentials before you walk in. It's an open door. Anybody can walk right in. Straight perverts are gonna start getting fake trans credentials, like people getting fake therapy dog certificates to get access into the women's room, and you anti-trans freaks made it possible. And third of all, what do you think goes on in a women's room in the first place? Lingerie tickle fights? Bro, they are changing out period products, taking enormous dumps, and ripping farts that they've been holding in for at least 45 minutes. Do you want to go in there and see that? I don't. So when you waste time yelling at people that they need to follow a set of cultural rules that govern their personal lives and punishing them for not following the rules closely enough, you're only helping the ruling class oppress you as well. You are accepting a set of rules that you follow, hoping that the ruling class will reward you for following them close enough. And that's pretty fucking pathetic if you ask me. You don't get a little treat or a pay raise or extra rights and privileges by the ruling class just because you did what they told you to do. Similar to gender, a person's race is just a bunch of made-up rules that we use to define a person's genetic makeup. But you might be thinking, people can't just change their race, that's totally different. Nope. People change their race all the time. It's accomplished by changing your last name. And people do that shit all the time. You may already know this, but Donald Trump's original family name was Trump. Donald's grandfather, Friedrich Trump, dodged the military draft and ditched his recently widowed mother to manage the family's vineyard all by herself, just to come to America and run a brothel. And when he came here, he changed his name to Frederick Trump to help avoid being deported back to Germany. So Friedrich successfully changed his race simply by changing his birth name. He took the things that were written on his birth certificate and changed it to something else to appear like a different person, to appear more American. And it was his right to do so. It's no different than transitioning gender, except Friedrich's motivations were cowardly, while trans people exhibit a great deal of courage when they decide to transition. In America, the racist system was set up to serve the white race. But like everything else, whiteness is made up. It's not real. It's meaningless. Racism is everything that has to do with establishing and reinforcing a hierarchy based on race. Slavery is the most stark example of the way race is used to create a hierarchy, where one group of people are subjugated and another group of people keep all the power and wealth for themselves. The subjugated people do all the work and get none of the money, and the people in power do none of the work and keep all the money for themselves. Racial prejudice is different. Sometimes it's benign, sometimes prejudice can even be positive, but only when prejudice is used to reinforce that racist hierarchy can that prejudice be considered racist. You get it? Unlike Black Americans who had their identities forcibly stripped from them, the white identity was created out of nothing to shed their ties to Europe and to justify the racist systems that they established in the New World, and Australia, and New Zealand, and South Africa, and a few other places. Shedding their ties to Europe is a crucial aspect of their manifest destiny idea, which claims that white people have a divine right by God to own all the land. And the concept of racism encompasses all of the things that are done to maintain that racial hierarchy. I have biases. I'm half Filipino, and I enjoy when I see other Filipinos when they are successful in sports or pop culture. Representation is based on cultural ties, but it's not harming anybody, and it doesn't reinforce any sort of racist system, therefore it's not racist. Look, everybody has inherent biases. You're constantly processing the world as you see it, and your biases cause you to make snap judgments. You see someone and assume their ethnicity, background, and lived experience based on their appearance. That is a form of prejudice, and people do it thousands of times per day. But the moment you meet that person, you should start to form a different, more personal understanding of that individual. You should let your prejudice be replaced with something based on the content of their character and not the color of their skin, right? Right? You do that, right? Because if you assume something negative about a person based on what you immediately perceive and then act on that negative bias, well then you're just a weak-minded person. You're too afraid to allow your inherent biases to be challenged by new information. Now if you assume negative things about a person based on your snap judgments and act on it to reinforce the racist system, well that's what makes someone a racist. And there are people from across all ethnic and cultural backgrounds that engage in racist activity, even if it harms themselves and other people like them. Some people will demonstrate racist stereotypes from their own group, or betray their own friends and family to try and gain favor with people occupying a higher place in the racial hierarchy. They're legitimizing that hierarchy, hoping that the people higher up will pull them up and out of their place in the racist system, but it doesn't work like that. The system wasn't built for you. This is why white people cannot experience racism. The hierarchy was built to serve them. at least in America. They can go to China and experience racism, but you can't experience it here. White people can experience negative prejudice, but there's no such thing as reverse racism against white people in America. Hawaii is one of the few places in the country where the racist system is not as established as the rest of the country. It's the only state in the country where white people aren't the majority. Interracial marriage was never illegal, and white culture is not the dominant one. White people who don't rely on the racist system barely even notice the difference. But the people who knowingly or unknowingly benefit from that racist system that exists on the mainland go to Hawaii and they really lose their shit.
You can talk all the fuck you want, all you fucking Hawaiians. The white lady's fucking crazy.
They aren't treated any worse than any other person from another culture, but they do get upset because they aren't being treated better than the people with nicer tans than them.
A refill?
The pitcher's over there. You can refill them yourself.
Can you leave her asking for water?
I know.
They're called Howleys, which means foreigner, and it reminds them of their European immigrant backgrounds. Howley isn't a slur, it forces them to face the fact that they are from somewhere else, and that dismantles the racist system they try desperately to uphold. The white plantation owners brought different groups of people with different languages and cultures to inflame racial differences, keeping them fighting each other so they can stay under their control. But they didn't account for how horny everybody got in those plantation quarters, and all the migrant workers started to intermarry. This caused a new local culture to become dominant, one that rejected the white culture that plantation owners tried to force onto the local people. And now in Hawaii, there's an entirely new and distinct local culture that's inclusive to everybody. Nobody assimilated, everybody just took on parts of everyone else's culture and mashed it all together. Local pidgin English took words from all the languages. Different cultural events weren't closed off, everyone was invited. Dishes from all different cultures were adopted into a new local cuisine. Even the Howleys were included. When a visiting Howley sees a local Howley guy unbothered when they're called a Howley, it's a reminder that the racist system is not there to make them feel like they're the ones in charge, and they can't handle it.
No, it's not enough!
Although it's not perfect, Hawaii's modern local culture shows how things can look if racism is dismantled. People aren't kept in a lower status because of their race. There isn't a race on top of everybody else who enjoys all the benefits of other people's work. And people are open to make racial jokes without doing any harm. And all you have to do to achieve that is get together, resist assimilating to a specific culture, enjoy and celebrate everybody's cultural differences, create a new inclusive culture that kind of ties everything together, and most importantly, we got to dismantle the system of racial hierarchy that puts one group on top of everyone else. So if you're following along, you already know what I'm going to say, but sexism is not very different than the other two topics I covered earlier. It's just another set of made-up rules based on cultural norms that the people in power try to enforce to create a hierarchy of rights and privileges for some and subjugation for others. There are a bunch of losers trying to tell people how men are supposed to act with a different set of rules for women. But have you noticed that all the men telling you how to be a real man look like they've never touched a boob without paying for it first? I don't think that's a coincidence. I sincerely believe that these manosphere dorks are telling men to do the exact opposite of what women actually want, because a sexually frustrated man is nihilistic and self-destructive, and then they can point these depressed men towards an enemy that the ruling class has picked out for them, like women, racial minorities, non-gender conforming people, people with leftist thinking. These enemies are the people who can actually help you get where you want to be in life, especially when it comes to dating and having a social life. Wait, hold up. Okay, I have a girlfriend and I have a pretty healthy social life, okay? Otherwise, I'd be pumping out these videos like once a week. A diversity of influences and thought can help you become the best version of yourself and be more comfortable with yourself. And then that'll allow you to plug yourself into healthier communities of people where you can have real life relationships. These manosphere idiots only motivate you to sit in the room alone, paying them a monthly fee while they point you to new groups of people to blame for the problems you face. The only people causing you problems are the people enforcing these different types of hierarchies. That way they can subtly make you feel like you're not measuring up, and then they can turn you into a little foot soldier that benefits them and hurts you. The whole trad wife trend only exists online. It's not real. The different stories and situations you read in Reddit and Telegram and Twitter aren't real either. The only way to get out of that loneliness and feelings of inadequacy inadequacy that you feel, or to see other people as humans with value so you can show them a bit of kindness and then you'll get some in return. You gotta let go of the hatred, brother. And by the way, have you ever even asked a woman what they want in a man? Like, ever? You have female family members, classmates, friends. Have you asked any of the women in your life what they want? Because if not, you should probably ask one, because I guarantee you that they'll tell you something very different than what these manosphere losers are making you pay them to tell you. Here's a little bit of advice, and it won't cost you a dime. Just a like and a subscribe and maybe a comment too, and hit that notification bell while you're at it. But the first piece of advice, women do not want a big muscly guy. I mean, some women do, but most women don't really want that. Manosphere types tell men to hit the gym and take all these supplements. Have you ever thought why? Because they make money every time you buy those supplements from them. If you actually ask women what they want, most of the time they want a guy who's thin or maybe a little soft around the midsection. They don't really want a buff rage monster going through mood swings all the time from all the testosterone boosters, ripping heinous protein shake farts and spending 3 hours a day in the gym. Obviously there are women who want a muscular guy, but for the most part that's not really a big deal to them. What they're doing is reflecting what you want. Men tend to want a woman to look a certain way, which isn't really bad or good, but it's not really the main thing that matters. If that's all you care about, that's a whole separate problem. But women don't really think like that. Looks are kind of secondary. I mean, look at me. I got this little, check this out. I got a little gut. Nothing wrong with that. Some love handles, who cares? I'm doing all right. Other than being happy with how you look physically, the only other thing you need to do is be funny, or if not, develop a skill or a real hobby. That's pretty much it. That's all you need to do. So that's why I wasn't surprised at all when Pete Davidson dated all those beautiful women. He's a skinny and funny guy. That's what women want. And if you asked them, they would have told you that. He's living proof. Why were you surprised at that? And not all types of humor will, attract a woman. You gotta have a specific type of humor that kind of draws them in. So you gotta let go of your hatred so that your humor can change to the type of humor that attracts people, including a romantic partner. You'll become more confident, and that will draw more people to you, I promise. Nobody wants to be around a hater, some guy that's just talking shit on everybody. It gets old after a while. The ruling class has tried to divide us to keep us under control, and the only way to topple that is to see past our differences and see each other as humans. And that's especially true for men and women. So what about the centrists? Believe it or not, both liberals and conservatives are the centrists of the country. They're both sides of the same centrist coin. More accurately, you can call them neoliberals. Just take a look at the definition of neoliberalism. You can see it right there. The conservatives fight for this and the liberals fight for that. And the more you look at them, the more obvious it becomes. They both complain and cancel anyone that they don't agree with. They both fight over deregulation and push for free market capitalism, just two different ideas of it. They both whine about taxes. It's just a tug of war that kind of wastes everybody's time. The conservatives are a little bit more neoliberal than the actual liberals, which is pretty funny when you think about it. And the conservatives push for deregulation for various reasons, but in reality, the deregulation only benefits the giant corporations and billionaires that take away our rights and poison our communities, which is something that either side didn't ask for, right? Nobody asked for that. But that's what we end up with. The conservatives push for tax cuts and cry about the budget deficit, and liberals push back and defend the bare minimum in taxpayer-funded programs. But the real winners are billionaires and corporations again, who have seen their tax bill cut in half over the past 50 years. This is something nobody is asking for, but that's what we end up with. These centrists do nothing but waste time and prevent progress, and they only end up giving the billionaire ruling class an opportunity to screw both groups equally, just like the original centrists in the original French Assembly. Both the liberal and conservative centrists have no principles, and they will change their position whenever it's no longer convenient for them. For example, liberals will talk about equal rights and tolerance until they're asked to give up their comfortable place in the hierarchy and stand on business with the working class. And the conservatives will harp on and on about rugged individualism and limited government and the rule of law until it's their side that needs the welfare handout.
Hold up, hold up, hold up, hold up, hold up.
Centrists do nothing but draw people into meaningless arguments and waste energy on a tug-of-war battle that only allows the billionaire ruling class to swoop in and take everything from us. The conservatives work to maintain this hierarchy system, hoping that their loyalty to the wealthy will earn them a nice little comfortable life a little bit higher in the hierarchy than everyone else, while the liberals are something called a controlled opposition. They act out the role of an opposition force against the ruling class while stepping aside and giving them 90% of what they asked for and celebrating the 10% of concessions that they actually achieved. But the thing about being a conservative centrist supporting the ruling class is that they never come through on their promises. They'll never invite you to the upper class. That's not how it works. It's not for you. The farmers that supported the conservatives are now facing bankruptcy. The Latinos for Trump are seeing their family members rounded up and jailed even if they're here legally. Working class conservatives are facing growing inflation and tax increases in the form of tariffs. Anti-DEI initiatives have hurt white conservative women most of all. And the main reason they were able to accomplish all of this is due to a shared cultural identity that connects all these different groups together. Something that's been distorted and twisted in a way that convinced millions of people to serve the wealthy and powerful, even though the foundations of that institution instructs its followers to do the exact opposite of that. Modern American Christian dogma enforces strict gender norms and racial divisions, all to enforce a social hierarchy, but Jesus was against all of that. Just read his words. Jesus specifically tells us to treat everybody as equals. He was explicitly against any hierarchical system that puts one group of people above another. Don't believe me? Read Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John again, and show me where I'm wrong. He doesn't single out any group of people as being worthy of hatred. Not even LGBTQ people. The Gospels are written in Greek. He lived under Roman rule. Those two cultures are the all-time world champions of gay shit, and Jesus didn't mention homosexuality as being evil. Not even once. That's like if the Gospels were set in modern-day Las Vegas and he doesn't take the time to talk about gambling. That just means that gambling is not a big deal, right? It's not blessed and it's not sinful, it just is. As long as you gamble in a way that doesn't harm anybody else, well then there's no problem with it. And don't talk to me about what's written in the Old Testament or anything written by Paul or anywhere else in the New Testament once the book of Acts begins, because Jesus said that he fulfilled all the old laws, so they don't apply anymore. And he also said that there are no prophets after him, which makes total sense, right? If the all-powerful creator of the universe sent his son to earth to send a direct message to people, then everything he says is perfect, obviously, but he'll also make sure to not leave anything else unsaid. He knows the beginning and the end of time, right? Why would he think, oh wait, I forgot to mention that they should know about the 7 deadly sins or the rapture or the prosperity gospels? If you believe in a perfect and all-knowing God, you also must believe that everything he said was perfectly timed and complete within Jesus' lifetime. If you read what the Gospels say, Jesus taught 2 main ideas. Number 1, that everybody is worthy of love and dignity, even those who are aggressive towards you. And number 2, that fake religious leaders and most rich people are going to hell. So when Christian people use hatred and prejudice to create a hierarchy that financially benefits a small group of people, well then that's the antithesis of what Jesus teaches, right? So that means homosexual people deserve to live their lives with the same rights and dignity as everyone else. That means any racist system is anti-Christian. He specifically commands his followers to show kindness to immigrants and racial minorities living alongside us. He says women deserve dignity and respect on the same level as a man. And show me where Jesus talks about abortion. Don't waste your time because it's not there. And we know abortion existed because the Old Testament describes it, and archaeological evidence proves that abortions were taking place around that time. But he doesn't even mention it once. So what does that tell you? We know for a fact that Jesus encountered a sex worker and he did not lecture her on the evils of abortion. Jesus defied gender norms and bucked social hierarchies by washing his disciples' feet. Washing feet was a job for servant women, and Jesus did that to demonstrate that there is no group of people higher than anyone else. The King of Kings washing the feet of his own followers, just like a servant girl. What does that tell you? That type of humility should be of the utmost importance to all Christians, but modern American Christianity is anything but that. They only preach humility towards the vain religious leaders and egotistical rich people that Jesus explicitly denounced. Obviously, if you're an atheist or you follow another religion, well then I'm not talking to you. You're free to believe whatever you want, and if I'm honest, I see way more atheists and non-Christians living a life more consistent with Jesus' teachings than actual Christians. But for the Christians watching this, try and read the Gospels again, nothing before it or nothing after it, and compare what you read with what you're hearing in the church, and ask yourself how consistent it is with things that Jesus did. It's not difficult. In most Bibles, his words are highlighted in red. It's right there. Just read them. Think to yourself, why am I even sitting in a church? Jesus was a carpenter, and he had 12 dudes with him at all times, and yet he never built a church. Not even once. You don't think that's weird? You think the fact that he was a carpenter wasn't an important detail that we should consider when we're making our judgment calls reading it? You think it's a little piece of lore that builds his resume? A fun little fact that, makes his story a little more interesting? No, it's a fact that should hit you right across the face and help you realize that the people building churches instead of homeless shelters just don't get it. They're fake teachers reinterpreting his teachings to benefit themselves financially. They are the camels trying to fit through the eye of a needle, and they're using religion to put money in their pockets. And that has morphed into a political system based on this demented version of Christianity that has created the system that we live in today. I mean, think about it this way. When Jesus went to temples, he flipped tables in anger, and when he died, he pierced the veil in the temple. He couldn't make it any more clear. So all the different groups of Christians trying to establish a hierarchy between men and women, between straight and homosexual people, between the different races, they're wrong. And that's not my opinion. That's what Jesus said. Compare what Jesus said to how they're living their life and see where it's inconsistent and make the judgment call yourself.
Jesus spent his entire life feeding the hungry and healing the sick. If you aren't doing those two things to the best of your ability, then you aren't a Christian. It's as simple as that. Especially if you're hiding inside of a church just so you can feel superior to non-believers while neglecting your duty as a Christian to help the needy. If you're trying to subdivide society into groups of people who don't deserve healthcare or food or an education that helps them get a decent job so they can care for themselves, then you aren't a Christian. Voting takes very little effort, and if you spend your vote on lawmakers that take food and healthcare away from any group of people for any reason, then you're missing the entire point of the Gospels.
So what did we learn today, folks? I always get all excited in these videos, but yeah, I guess this is another one, so maybe I'll be a little bit more calm on the next one. So we learned that everybody is worthy of love and kindness and dignity. Everyone has the right to live their life however they choose to, as long as it's not harming anybody. A hierarchy of rights, privileges, wealth, and dignity is anti-Christian, and it also goes against our Constitution if that's something you care about. But yeah, it's all about life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, right? If you're against that, then I guess you're against the American way. We learned that by its very definition, the right wing enforces that type of hierarchy that restricts rights from certain people while benefiting another group. Centrist liberals and conservatives just waste space and get in the way, giving the right the opportunity to consolidate their power. So the only obvious answer is to support the left. If you consider yourself a Christian and an American, then you should dismantle the system of hierarchy and make sure that people who work hard and do all their work get the money and credit for all the work that they do. I think that's something that everybody can support.
But white men might say, what hierarchy? How come I'm still struggling? If racism and sexism were real, then why does my life still suck? And that's true. White poverty is a real thing. But the existence of white poverty isn't proof that racism doesn't exist. It just proves that the racist system was built to benefit a very small and very wealthy class of people that you are not a part of. It just proves that it doesn't matter how much you play by their rules, they will never invite you into the upper class. If you live in a rural area without anyone lower in the hierarchy to exploit, then they exploit you. Just like crabs in a barrel, we waste our time and energy fighting and pulling each other down into a pit that the ruling class put us in, fighting over made-up rules that they assign to us. And while we're wasting our time competing for a higher place within the hierarchy, working harder to gain their favor, they just go and take all the money we generate for themselves. We do all the work, and they take all the money generated from all of our hard work. The first step is to reject the hierarchy that they assign to us, and to accomplish that, we just need to understand a couple basics.
You know, it's obvious stuff. Young people should have equal access to a top-notch education so they can maximize their potential, regardless of who they are. Working people should be able to get a paid living wage and have enough left over to invest in their retirement, regardless of who they are. Older working Americans should be able to retire into a comfortable life, regardless of who they are. And the class of billionaires who live off of other people's hard work should be dismantled and left in the past. It's the Christian thing to do, and it's the American thing to do. And the way we get to that is by dismantling any and all hierarchies. So the first step in doing that is understanding what words mean. And after this, you should probably know a little bit more than you did before you hit play. So don't forget to hit like and subscribe, share this and any of my other videos with everyone you know, and that's about it from me. Thanks.